Welcome back to the channel, everyone. In this next video on full frame repair, we're going to focus on the front of the truck. Now, for the sake of this video, this is a Chevy or a GMC four-wheel drive. I don't know why it is. I'm going to guess, full frame repairs, probably somewhere 50 to 60 of them, and that's quite a few full frames to pull. But the majority of them have been Chevy or GMC. Probably 85% of those have been Chevy or GMC. And I don't know why, if there's that many more of those on the road, or they're more prone to being accidents. I don't know why, but they're going to be different than a Ford or a Dodge, because on a four-wheel drive on a GM product, it has independent suspension, so you've got lower and upper control arms and that heavy cross member right underneath the engine there, where the other two, Ford and Dodge, their four-wheel drives use a straight axle front end. So you have a cross member, but it's not as heavy as the GMC, and you don't have the suspension mount points down here. So it makes a big difference on how you're anchoring and pulling, but it's the same principle either way around. Or this is basically the same as a Ford or a Dodge or more a Dodge in a two-wheel drive vehicle. So in this video here, what I'm going to cover is getting this front end pulled, and this takes a lot more power than anything you're going to do in the back. When we've pulled it to square up the back end, it doesn't take a whole lot of power to move that. The diamond, I showed how you can do that with the wrench binders. But now when we get to the front, we're all locked in here. Everything is all tightened down where we want it. And it's a very short area from underneath this torque box right up to this front cross member. And it takes a lot of power to get all this put into shape, put back in where it's supposed to be. Now the front rails, we're not even going to worry about those. Don't measure your front rails next in relation to the back of this, because these could be off. Say, I think I said in a previous video, we're going about 12 millimeters over side sway here. If you don't pull this back into shape, you don't really do anything for the frame if you're just trying to bend these rails over. This has to be moved back over the center. And if we're finally back down to, 1, maybe 2 millimeters tolerance in here, we're still 12 millimeters out there in the front. But in this section, we're still going to be over, and it's usually not as bad. You may have a 4 millimeters overhead at the rear of the control arm mounts, maybe 6 up here. Or it could be that if it got hit on the wheel, it'll drive this section back before it will this cross member. So these are very important points you have to measure and get those straight. So one thing I always do, and it depends if your frame rack is capable of it or not, is hooking a snatch block system up when you're pulling on that front end like that to double the power. Your chain comes over your pulley on here's your power post. It'll loop out around the snatch block, come back and anchor, and this will go right to the vehicle where you're pulling. And that'll double your power right there, just putting that snatch block in there. And it's going to move slower when you're pulling, but you have so much power, and especially on a 3/4 ton truck, you want to get all that stuff to move nice and easy, nice and slow. If you're just using a 10 ton, it should do it, but it's just struggling at it. And I just like setting that up. It takes a little longer to set it up, but it does make it pull so much nicer. And like I said, if you're looking under the front of the vehicle, here's that lower cross member, there's your control points coming out. Those are the points you want to measure right there. Now some of them, it could be, depending on a model or which other kind of truck, it could be the steering rack right in there you're measuring. Or, like I said, the GMC or the Chevy truck, it's going to be your lower control arm mounting points. The rear mounting point for the lower control arm is a perch welded off the bottom of the frame, goes out to your ball joint out here. Now on a four-wheel drive truck, they usually have a bracket on there that comes over that'll hook to the other side, so you'll have that same perch there. And if it shoves one side over, it's going to shove the other, the opposite side over too. So These are kind of tough to pull, and I've tried it years ago and it doesn't work. Grabbing that control arm out there and pulling forward. And that's the way it got hit. If that wheel got hit, it pushed that in, but I've never been able to pull that out by just using the control arm. So I don't know if anybody has tried it, let me know, or if they've had any luck with it, but I've never got it to work. I always come in here with my chain and I'll hook it right around the back of this as close as I can to the bottom. And to keep it from sliding off, because some of these things will actually be notched off, there's not a lot there, I'll clamp vice grip pliers onto the bottom of here, a couple sets of them. And that'll keep that chain, because the heads on those things have that, it's raised up on that top jaw, and it'll keep that chain from sliding off. You could probably get 2 or 3 sets in there, get them as tight as you can. And you do your pull right down here and it's gonna move, I guarantee it. It'll go where you want it, and it'll pull both sides at a time. And one thing you have to keep in mind too while you're doing that, make sure that sometimes you'll have a measurement on the frame right in this area. You wanna make sure that that frame didn't get buckled in here and you're just trying to pull that perch, those mounting points out. The frame and everything has to be in unison with that perch, so make sure that that comes out. But for the sake of this video, that's what I just wanted to stress, a couple points with pulling on the front end where it does take so much power, and make sure you measure on this before you even worry about the front end. That we're not going to worry about until we have all these points in place. And this is real critical on your front end alignment. If that's not in place, this ball joint is going to measure back some. And sometimes there's enough adjustment in these eccentrics. You can get by with a little bit, but it just throws everything off. It's like I talked in a previous video with the thrust angle. If you got the back off, it's going to track different. If you got a ball joint that's back, it's going to do the same thing. A little bit of offset, you might not notice driving down the road, but it just throws off camber and caster and toe and the way the steering wheel is. So a lot of guys I've seen, and I've tried it before too, done it. You just take a tape measure and you measure back here to a hole in the frame and you compare that side to side, and that'll give you a pretty good idea. But if you're using a 3D measuring system, you don't even need to worry about measuring that ball joint. If you set those systems up right, you measure all these points and put them where they're supposed to be, you don't need to measure that ball joint. When that frame was being built in the factory and it goes into a jig and it gets all set in place, they don't have control arms on there to double check anything. That comes in after. You could have a control arm that's bent where it could affect your measurement there, so don't rely on just measuring something like that. Use the frame machine or a frame measuring system if you've got it. If you're using centerline gauges, you can set those gauges to hang on these points too. So go off of everything that the frame tells you and not so much just a ball joint out here. So I think that'll do it for this video. The next video we're going to work on these front rails and then maybe get into how to take care of some height issues with the frame. So that'll do it for this one. Thanks for watching.